Welcome to the How of Business with your host, Henry Lopez, the podcast that helps you start, run, and grow your small business. And now, here is your host.
Welcome to this episode of the How of Business. This is Henry Lopez. My guest today is Nick Mullen. Nick, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Henry. Glad to be here.
Absolutely. An important topic that we're going to discuss. We've discussed it here a couple of times recently, or at least one other time recently, but it's such a critical topic, cybersecurity for small business owners. We are the target of cybersecurity, whether we like to accept that or realize that. And so it's important that we protect ourselves and our businesses from what could potentially be a catastrophic situation in the way of a cybersecurity breach. So that's what we're going to explore today with Nick. You can find all of the business resources, including the show notes page for this episode, which will include all the links that we talk about. And to learn more about my one-on-one and group coaching programs, just visit thehowofbusiness.com. I also invite you to consider supporting this podcast on Patreon and subscribe wherever you might be listening so you don't miss any new episodes. So let me tell you a little bit more about Nick, and then we'll get into the conversation. Nick Mullen is a security and governance professional with nearly 20 years of experience in technology and leadership in financial services and other highly regulated industries. Over the last decade plus, Nick has been delivering technology and compliance solutions of all shapes and sizes, working with organizations in the Fortune 50, small businesses like ours, and everything in between. Today, he leads the team at Entoo Security. That's who he's with today, a full-service cybersecurity firm based in the Midwest. Nick lives in Bloomington, Illinois. So once again, Nick Mullen, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
I'd like to start with kind of your career path. If I got it right as I was looking at your LinkedIn profile, you studied cybersecurity in university, correct?
I did. So I went back to school in my 30s for cybersecurity.
I see.
So I went to a local university here in Bloomington, Illinois State University, for a couple of years. I did not finish my degree at the time. I ran out of money.
And what were you studying back then? I'm curious.
Communications.
Interesting.
Which was really just kind of, it was the major I picked because I wasn't sure what I wanted to be when I grew up.
Exactly.
And, there's times where number one, I still don't necessarily feel like I'm growing up. And number two, I still wonder if I know what I want to be, but I feel like I'm getting a little bit closer. I better be. I own a company now.
Exactly.
So hopefully
and we haven't mentioned yet the what we discussed before we started recording, which is that tree in the background. And so describe that to the people who can't quite make out what's on there. Now I do, because I know what it is.
Yeah, it's a Star Trek tree. So it's a black Christmas tree with
black. Okay.
Yeah, it's a black tree with just the yellow lights. So those are supposed to kind of look like stars. And then on the tree is the Star Trek keepsake ornaments. So it's just the Star Trek ships. So it looks like ships floating through space.
And as you mentioned previously, you keep it up all year
round. So I was going to take it down last year. And I was a guest on someone else's podcast, and right before we started to record, I said, I can take this tree down real quick because it was January. And he said, if I were you, I would never take that thing down because it's a conversation starter for everybody that you meet. And he was so right.
Yeah. And it certifies you as a geek. There's no doubt about it, right? I mean,
it does, for sure.
Certainly sci-fi and technology and so forth. All right. So I interrupted you. So what did you go into IT in your 20s? Like before you went back to school, what were you doing?
Nope, I sure didn't.
Okay.
So I had a real strange path to get into security. I grew up in a very low income area. I didn't even have my first computer until I was 20.
Wow.
And so I was not a technical person at all.
What time frame are we talking about? What years are we talking about here?
Early 2000s.
Early 2000s. Okay.
Yep.
All right. So to not have a computer until your 20s, that was late for economic reasons, I'm gathering.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
But then I after I dropped out of school, I kind of went from one job to the next. I worked in a call center for a while as a bill collector.
Mm-hmm.
I sold cars for a while. I always joke around that if I go to law school and become an attorney, I'll have the trifecta for the most hated professions in the country.
Gathered those up.
yeah, maybe I could run for office after that and just
Good point.
check every box. But yeah, so I basically kind of bounced around from job to job, and I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. And then I got into project management, like technology project management.
Mm,
I kind of fell into it. And while I was doing that, I started working on some security projects. And I was moonlighting as a security guard at a concert hall at the time. So I
interesting.
was doing physical security. And I was in a meeting one day, and there was another gentleman. He was a security architect that I think he could tell that I just didn't know what was going on, and everything was going right over my head. And the meeting ended, and he said, "Hey Nick, do you have 20 minutes? Can you stay here with me?" And so I did. And he knew that I did some physical security work, and he took this time out of his day
Mm,
to basically one for one, like basically give me like analogies of the things that I was aware of in like the physical security space, and then give me an analogy for what that looked like from a technology standpoint.
interesting.
It totally changed the
Yeah,
dynamic of my whole
what a
career,
tremendous thing for him to have done for you.
changed my life. 100%. After that call, it was the first time that things started to make sense for me,
Mm,
and I felt like the gears kind of clicked into place. Within 6 months, I had went back to school
wow.
and started my cybersecurity degree. I graduated with a security degree a couple years later, and now here I am a decade later, and I own a security firm.
Wow.
So it best thing that ever
What
happened
do
to
you
me.
think attracted you to it? Obviously, you had gotten a little bit of taste of law enforcement, if you will, or security enforcement in the physical world, and then you had this tremendous opportunity of somebody to kind of introduce you to this world. But what appealed to you about it, and still does today?
It was very easy to feel like I was on the right side of things,
Uh-huh.
and like I was like you always want to be the good guy.
Hmm.
It was easy to feel like you were the good guy. You know, there's something to be said for you can go out and you can help build an app to make a lot of money, or build an app to help somebody else make a lot of money.
Hmm.
That's great. um but like you don't necessarily sleep better at night because you built an app to make somebody else a lot of money.
Hmm.
I do sleep better at night knowing that
Hmm.
the work I'm doing protects real people, real like their data, real infrastructure, real services. Because like cybersecurity is one of the only professions outside of the military and law enforcement where there's an adversary. There is a
Right.
bad guy out there. You don't
Yeah.
know where he or she is. I shouldn't let the girls off the hook here because there's
Right.
plenty of bad
Sure.
guys and girls out there. You don't know where they are, but they could be anywhere in the world and they can attack at any time.
Right.
And so you're in a real job with a real adversary protecting real tangible assets. And there was a lot
Hmm.
of appeal to that to me.
At a high level, then, what do you observe are some of the big misconceptions that small business owners in particular have about cybersecurity?
Number one is it's not going to happen to me, and I'm too small of a target.
Yeah, I think those are the biggest ones I hear, or the assumption that I think most people have. Why do they want
Yep.
me? I've got 50 grand in the bank. I'm a small business. I'm a solopreneur, whatever the case might be.
And the thing to keep in mind is so that I've got $50,000 in the bank. Well, a lot of these cyber criminals, they they, they live or they work out of developing countries. $50,000 might be as much as they make in the next decade. So $50,000 to them is a huge deal, and for a lot of small business owners, it's a huge deal as well. But a lot of individuals think, because of my size, I'm not a big target. And the analogy that I like to give back is who gets robbed more, the bank or the gas station? Well, the bank's got a lot more money in the till than the gas station does, but the bank's also got a lot more controls and protections in place than the gas station does.
Right.
So people knock off gas stations and not banks.
Yeah.
It's the same way with small businesses. If you look in the Fortune 100, those companies are spending tens of millions of dollars every year to protect their assets,
Right.
and small businesses may not be spending anything at all. The other thing that's important to remember is these Fortune 100 companies are spending tens of millions of dollars or hundreds of millions of dollars on cybersecurity, and they still have bad days.
Because I
They
was
s-
just going to
they
say
still
that.
they still get had all the
Yeah.
time.
It's such a great analogies that you're making it. And going back to the point, not only is that, let's keep with that number of 50,000 or 10,000 or whatever it might be. Not only is that big, relatively speaking, but But this type of crime, because it's technology driven, they can perpetrate this 1,000 times at at any given moment. They're able to amplify it through technology, and so that makes it even easier or even more worthwhile, right?
Absolutely. And the the availability of AI to kind of, scale these attacks, it's made this so much easier.
Yeah,
5 or 10 years ago, if you got a phishing email, like the layman was probably able to take a look at it and be
right,
able to spot, typos and grammatical errors and say that this
Mhm.
doesn't really look like it came from my bank. Well,
Right.
today those cyber criminals are using Chat GPT to craft those messages, and they're pretty grammatically accurate. And if you use the right prompt to say, I would like for this to look like it came from a personal banker,
Yeah,
Chat GPT will make it look like it came from a personal
absolutely.
banker.
Furthermore, if I already hacked in or I've got your emails and I can say, resemble that same tone or that same approach, even more so that it looks like it's coming from my boss, right? Or
Mhm.
that's asking me to do something, or the vendor, or whatever the case might be, who's trying to get my attention or get me to do something. I think also, I mean, you know better than I, with AI, what they're going to be able to do now with voice synthesization and mimicking voices, that is scary in and of itself, right?
Terrifying, and I've got a really good story about that. So this happened last year with Ferrari.
Mm.
So there was an executive at Ferrari that received a phone call from the CEO of Ferrari. I should know this guy's name by now because I've told the
Mhm.
story enough times, but he gets a phone call from the CEO of Ferrari saying, "Hey, we have this confidential business deal going on,
Wow.
and I need you to wire several $1,000,000 to this account." Well, this executive knew the CEO, and he said that the voice on this phone call was so good, it was all the way down to this guy's region-specific Italian accent. Eh,
It's amazing.
he would have bet dollars to donuts that
That
it
it was
was the
him.
CEO. The only thing that gave him pause is he called from a number that wasn't the CEO's personal number because,
I
again, he
see.
knew this guy.
Right.
So he he had been educated somewhere along the way. He asked a something question. So something only the CEO would know, which in this case was the name of a book that the CEO had recommended to him several months prior. He
Wow.
said,
Thank
"Remind me, what
goodness
was?"
that those alarms went off in his head to say, something's fishy here."
Absolutely. And he said, "Hey, what was the name of that book you recommended to me?" And at that point, the cyber criminal knew the jig was up, hangs up the phone, and the crisis averted. But otherwise,
Wow.
he was directed by the CEO of his company to make a significant wire transfer, and a lot of people would just do it.
Yeah, that's why this is going to get even worse. And so you provided there in and of itself some tips of things that don't cost much money, but that we can implement right away. Some kind of
Mhm.
validation, passcode, some way to verify. First of all, first rule number one, we'll kind of just start to jump into it, is I never take it for granted that that person calling is real. I always say, let
Right.
me call you back. Click,
Mhm.
and then get that person's cell phone number or whatever the number might be. That's step number one. Is that fair?
Absolutely.
And then secondly, there's got to be a policy in place that cannot happen. Great, Nick, but let's follow our policy now, which requires you to do A, B, and C, or whatever the case might be. Yeah.
Mhm.
I need to
Yeah,
get these things from you now, or I need you
e
to answer these questions, or whatever the case might be.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Have a process in place to help mitigate this type of attack.
Yeah. Because it's going to happen more and more and more. And again, not only are we the target because we're an easy target, it's worthwhile for them because technology allows them now to do this, 100 times, 1,000 times an hour until they get somebody who bites, right? And so it
100%.
facilitated such that they can really leverage themselves because the technology allows them to amplify this.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's so easy to scale this, and it's so cheap that, you know, it's just gonna continue to get worse and more prevalent because this is the new organized crime.
Well said. Yeah. And the thing is, too, where that money ends up, we have no recourse. There is no, you're not going to call the FBI and they're going to go find them in wherever that might be, some other country, right? That's not happening.
It's gone.
It's gone.
I know of a situation a few years ago where a small business owner, I think he owned a landscaping company. He ended up getting hacked, and the hacker got into his 401k
Oh boy.
and took out a hardship distribution, 50% of the value of his 401k.
Hmm.
Now there was a layer of approval required to make that distribution. However, the layer of approval was the business owner and their email. Well, the hacker was in their email already.
Yeah.
And so they approved the transaction. $400,000 lost out of this guy's 401k, and there's no way to get that back.
Unbelievable. All right. So if you're listening still and you're scared, that's the point, right? I want you to be scared because that's what's going to lead us to take action. But let's get even more scared. Ransomware. Everybody has heard of it probably, or some of us have heard of it, but explain what it is and how it gets perpetrated, particularly on small business owners.
Ultimately, it's extortion, blackmail. That's what this is all about. So the cyber criminals, unless there's some sort of like political motivation, which is not for small businesses, you're probably not going to have a lot
Probably
of
not. Yeah.
politically motivated. It's financial.
Mhm.
So they're going to take the path of least resistance to get your money. If they can just go into your account and steal it, they will.
That's what they'll do, of course. Yeah.
If they can't steal it, then they'll try to scam you into giving them the money. And we hear about this all the time where, like they get you to redirect payment to a new bank, or go out and buy a bunch of gift cards and send them to me. So you've got those types of scams. Well, if they can't scam you, then they're going to go to extortion, and that's when we're talking about ransomware. Typically there's a couple things that they'll do there. They'll try to gain control of your system, and mostly what they want to gain control of is your identity. So your identity for a lot of small businesses is your email address. That's what you use to log into your computer in the morning. That's what you log into a lot of your systems with. If
Mhm.
they can gain control of your email address and lock you out of it, they can communicate as you, they can access your data and your resources like they were you.
Mhm.
They can delete that data. They can release it to the world. Oftentimes what they'll do is they'll lock you out of every system that they can, and then they'll also go in and they'll take your data and encrypt it, which is encryption is basically they're going to use a computer algorithm to make it inaccessible, and you're never going to be able to access it without a key. And the key is going to be some sort of alphanumeric code, like 64 characters long, that you're never in a
Right.
million years going to
Yeah.
guess.
You're not going to be able to hack that, or guess
And
it. Yeah.
unless you, yeah, and unless you pay them, typically, in like Bitcoin or something like that, they
Mhm.
will not release that key to you to decrypt your data. And so that's typically the path they take. The problem here is, even if you get that key, decrypting data, that's not 100%. And it's not like they're using the safest platforms to do that. I mean, they don't really care whether you can
They
get
don't
your
care.
data
Yeah.
back. They just want to get the money, assuming that they give you the key a- after you pay them. Because again, I mean, we're talking about criminals. They're not exactly known for doing what they say they're going to do.
Yeah.
Um, so it puts small business owners in a terrible situation.
So should I ever pay the ransom?
I mean, I like to think that I wouldn't, but I also like to think that I would never be in a position where I had to.
Mhm. I mean, I've
Um,
heard stories of people paying it.
yep, me too. And sometimes it works out okay. Oftentimes it doesn't. The other thing to remember is, if you pay the ransom, is you're 80% more likely to be held ransom again
Mm,
if you pay the ransom.
I imagine
But
so.
there's nothing stopping them from going out and a month later doing the
Do
exact
it
same
again. Yeah.
thing. Why wouldn't they? I
All
would
right.
not recommend it.
So what do I do if I do get extorted? In other words, I get I call it kidnapped. My systems get kidnapped and locked out, and now they're asking me for payment. What should I do? What's the best practice?
Call a professional. Um, the hope is that you've got backups in place. The other hope is that you have some sort of account that's like kind of like a break glass in case of emergency account that you can use to go in and basically remove the bad actor or the cyber criminal from your environment. And that's a
So get them
recommendation that we
out.
make.
You're not going to be able to, decrypt. What's the right word? To
Yep, decrypt.
right. You're not going to be able to do that. But you're going to help me with. All right. What are our options? First of all, let's lock them out so they don't have access. Get them out, and
Yep.
then let's figure out where we might be able to cobble the data back together, or what you did or didn't have in a way of backups, or how do we get you back up and running? Is that correct?
Absolutely.
And to help assess what's my loss here. All right,
Mhm.
you've lost this customer data. You're going to have to notify these customers that their credit card information is stolen. Whatever the steps need to be taken, that's what you would help somebody with.
Yes. Yeah,
Okay.
we would go in and we basically help you put the pieces back together. We'll find out what you did to prepare for this situation and, what protections you already have in place. And if the answer is none, then we'll help you start over the best that we can.
This is Henry Lopez, briefly pausing this episode to invite you to schedule a free coaching consultation with me. I welcome the opportunity to chat with you about your business plans and offer the guidance and accountability that we all need to achieve success. As an experienced small business owner myself, I understand the challenges you're experiencing, and often it's about helping you ask the right questions to help you make progress towards achieving your goals. Whether it's getting started with your first business or growing and maybe exiting your existing small business, I can help you get there. To find out more about my business coaching services and to schedule your free coaching consultation, please visit thehowofbusiness.com. Take that next step today towards finally realizing your business ownership dreams. I look forward to speaking with you soon. Okay, one more area, and then we'll talk a little bit more about how to start protecting ourselves, as we've been mentioning. I know you guys specialize in the FTC Safeguard Rule. I'm not even sure that I completely know what that is, but explain that to us.
Sure thing. So, the FTC Safeguards Rule is part of GLBA, so Graham-Leach-Bliley Act. It's been around since the early 2000s, but for about 20 years, the FTC Safeguards Rule, it wasn't written very, very well or very clearly, and it didn't really prescribe, like it didn't have very good guidance on what people had to do. They completely rewrote it back in 2001, amended it in 2000 or in 2023, and then again in 2024. It's very clear now,
Okay.
and the scope of it is financial institutions or anyone that is basically involved in financial activity, which is a lot broader than you would think.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about tax firms, accountants, bookkeeping practices, car dealers, because you can do financing at your car dealer, collection agencies, financial advisors, investment advisors. They're all in scope for the FTC Safeguards Rule. And it's pretty prescriptive. It basically says that you have to have a security program that's designed to protect customer data, and it has some other requirements inside the rule around things like having a written information security program, having a qualified individual running that program, um, conducting a periodic risk assessment on the risks that are faced by your business, and you have to have an incident response plan.
And that individual can be internal or outsourced?
They sure can.
Okay.
So a lot of small businesses, they just don't have the financial means to hire a security
No.
professional. A lot of them they
We
don't
don't
have the
even
money
have
to hire
IT
IT.
typically. Yeah, we outsource that if at
Yeah,
best.
you have to. I mean, a good chief information security officer, that's to hire one full time is a $250,000 a year
Right.
hire.
And it wouldn't even be my first hire in IT. I would hire, another role first. So by the time I got to a size to justify that, I'm a much larger organization typically.
Absolutely. So the FTC Safeguards Rule, they specify inside the language of the reg itself that you can outsource your qualified individual requirement to a service provider, but ultimately, as the business owner, you still have to maintain oversight of that individual or that service provider. And part of the way that they want you to do that is that individual or service provider needs to be reporting to you on at least an annual basis around what the security program looks like and how it is continuing to protect them against cyber threats.
All right. Well, let's get into what it is that you guys offer inclusive of this. But and I know you like I said in the bio, you focus in part on small business owners, not just small businesses, but as part of your focus. So give us the brief summary of what N2 provides.
So our bread and butter is FTC safeguards compliance. So we have a compliance program where we've basically designed or we've documented the shared responsibility model for, here are the, all the requirements of the rule. Here's what we'll do. Here's what we share responsibility between us and the client, and here's what the client maintains responsibility for. Over a period of 24 to 36 months, we will implement all of the required controls to get you 100% compliant with the rule, for a flat monthly fee. It's just dependent on how many employees you have at your organization.
So is the model that obviously I pay you to get that implemented, but then ongoing to serve in that role, inclusive of ongoing security protections and support?
Yep. So we'll manage your security program ongoing for that. There are a lot of different requirements that you have to repeat every year or
Mhm.
periodically, like a penetration test, risk assessments, things like that. So we time box those activities and say that, as part of this monthly fee, we will also continue to provide all this support on an annualized basis for you to make sure that you're meeting every requirement of the rule.
And it doesn't matter what my tech stack is. You don't have to host it. I could be on QuickBooks and Jobber and MailChimp and have, a Microsoft network. It doesn't matter, or do you need to take control of all of that?
Generally speaking, we're going to look for either a Microsoft shop or a Google shop. If you're not on either one of them, then it's going to be difficult for you to really secure your environment anyway.
Microsoft
So
or Google for the network and for email. Is that what we're talking about? Those two components, or
for email and basically as your identity provider.
got it? Okay.
So you know uh, most organizations today are going to use an email address as kind of their identity, and
Yep.
so you have to be set up in one of those two
Okay. All right.
platforms.
So as long as I've got those, which is the most common, I could
Mhm.
still separately have QuickBooks Online and HubSpot CRM and all those other
Yes.
kind of technology components. But as long as I'm on one of those two major identity platforms, then that's good.
Yes. And all those other cloud services like, QBO or HubSpot or MailChimp or
Mhm.
anything like that, we're going to want to integrate those into your identity provider. So basically use like the button where it says sign in through Microsoft or sign in through Google. We're going to want you to do that. That way we also have oversight over who has access to what, how often they're
Right.
accessing those resources, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. Yeah. The shared login approach. Okay. Give me a guidance on how much this costs and whether it's affordable for the typical small business owner.
So we've got three different prices. One is for a sole proprietor, so one seat, $300 a month, flat fee. Two seats, it's $200 a month each, or 400 a month. Three or more is 175 a month each.
And when we
And
say seats, just to clarify, that means everybody who has an email address, who has access to any of these accounts, that's a seat.
correct.
Okay. All right. So let's do the quick math. If I've got a company of about 10 employees that have access to these systems, um, then what does that
1750,
add up to?
$1,750 a month.
Okay, got it. Great. Thanks for giving me that range and that guidance. So definitely, affordable, especially for what it gets me. All right. What else do I need to know about N2? And I think you have an offer for our listeners as well.
I sure do. So N2, I'll do a quick elevator pitch here real quick. So we're a full service cybersecurity firm. We focus on tax and accounting, bookkeeping. We'll do some work for small credit unions as well, but then also small businesses even beyond that. You don't have to be in the FTC Safeguards Rule
Okay, so
for
I could be like an electrician or a HVAC
100%.
service company, and you can work with those as well. It's just
Yep,
there's a specialty here of those FTC safeguard rules where that applies. That's one of your specialty areas.
it is. But those requirements, to be honest, that's what most
They're
businesses
good
should be doing
guidelines. Yeah,
anyway.
yeah, yeah.
They sure are.
It's a good baseline. All right, so let's come back to that. We've mentioned certain things, but what are some other effective strategies aside from hiring you? That let's say that's part of it. What are some other strategies you see that businesses that do this well that they implement?
Um, One of the biggest things is understanding what they have and where it is. So an asset inventory. Almost any technology professional is going to tell you that's the place to start. So what devices you have. So, basically your laptops, your PCs, if you've got a server, mobile devices, just document what you have and who has possession of it. Then the same thing goes for the systems that you use and the data that you have. Just document what you have and where it is. That way, in the event that you do have an emergency, you know what you need to recover, what you need to deal with. Beyond that, once you've got a good asset inventory in place, that's when you can start looking at a risk analysis and assessing the risk that you actually face for your business. The thing that I like to remind people is, like, for you to be at risk for something, there has to be a vulnerability and a threat. So for me, like, eh, there hurricanes are a threat every year for me, but I live in Illinois, so I'm not really vulnerable to that.
Right.
Now you are in Florida, you are vulnerable to that. So hurricanes are a risk for you where they're not a risk for me. That's when you want to go in and you want to have a professional take a look at what your environment is, assess the risk, and then design the right security controls to protect against the risk that you face.
If I've got, so my argument in part might be, well, I've got a backup process in place. It backs up to OneDrive automatically. And so I've got my systems backed up there. Of course, when it comes to QuickBooks Online or something else, that's being backed up there. But the reality is that, let's take the OneDrive example. If I get hacked, they probably can hack to that data as well, right? They're going to get to that data. So I'm just
Yes.
curious, from a layman's term, what is the best approach from a backup perspective that is as safeguarded as possible?
So there's two things. The first is access to your backup has to be strictly controlled. So if you have access to all your primary data, access to your backup, like, your identity shouldn't grant access to that.
Got it.
So you should have a privileged account that is
Mhm.
only used to access those backups, and the credentials for that privileged account should be stored physically. Like, put that in a fire safe in your basement.
Right.
Don't put it
Not on
on
my
your
computer
computer.
anywhere. Yeah.
Yep. And so
Okay.
separate it that way. Then the second thing is test your backups.
Mhm.
That's I hate this story so much, but it happens all the time where people are doing all the right things. They're backing up
Mhm.
their data, but then they go to test it and it doesn't work.
Yeah.
But they never tested it until they needed it. Test it before you need it.
Yeah, I've had that brings to mind. I've had situations where we thought we were running an automated backup, but it had stopped working and nobody had noticed. And,
Mhm.
for several months, we didn't have a backup really. That doesn't happen as much now, but still, yeah. Okay, so great point there. And then you talk a lot about educating our employees because they are inclusive of ourselves, but our people are often the entry point, right?
Yeah, almost. I've seen stats that say somewhere around 80 to 90% of all data breaches originate with social engineering.
Okay, and
And
explain social engineering.
so social engineering is basically you're tricking someone into doing what you want them to do. So the oldest example, the oldest one in the book is the Trojan horse.
Right.
You roll this horse up and say it's a gift and get them to open the gates, and they bring it in, and all of a sudden now you're
Yeah,
free to
only I
attack the
don't even
city.
only now it's blind. I don't see that they're infiltrating me now, right? I don't see anything. And that's either
They're
because I click here or open this or go to this site or whatever combination thereof. Yeah.
it's typically they're impersonating someone that you know or someone that you're expecting correspondence from, and they're using those impersonation tactics to get you to take an action that will, either install like a virus or malware on your device, or you end up paying the wrong party for something. That's a very, very common scam, is they get you to redirect funds to a new bank account. I have a client that lost $150,000 from that
Mhm.
last year.
So what simple practice might they have had in place that might have avoided that?
A process to verify anytime a vendor or a partner says that they want to change bank accounts, and
Okay.
some way of verifying that out of band, like, hey, I'm going to call you on the phone to do this, or having some sort of passphrase in place.
Mhm.
um, you hear that type of guidance a lot with family members, to say
Yeah.
that you should have a passphrase in place that only you know. That way you can validate you really are talking who you think you are.
I think this is going to become more and more coming back to the voice impersonation. It's going to become a bigger issue that it isn't to my daughter. If my daughter called now and she was in a desperate situation, I'll do anything, right? And
Mhm.
so that's going to be exploited at a personal level, not to mention in a business situation. But you're right. One
Absolutely.
of the things, and so it's interesting, I don't know where I got this idea. Maybe I came up with it or maybe somebody told me about it. But years back, about 10 years ago, we had a business, and the rule was that if I did not include a password in the top of my email, you did not open the attachment. You assumed it was not from me. Yeah. It
Mhm.
was back when there was a lot of that email phishing going on, right? And so that was our internal safeguard, and it worked. Yeah.
Mhm.
The other
Absolutely.
safeguard was we had, we were doing a lot of ACH transactions as methods of payment. We had a separate finance laptop, and we did not go onto the internet nor check email on that laptop, right? So those things worked back then, obviously, and they still, I think, can work.
Mhm.
But just educating our employees on what these things are and how it can happen is a big step in the right direction, right?
100%. And reminding them that, you know, you can never take the approach of this isn't going to happen to me, because almost everyone has a bad day eventually. I work in the security industry. I probably get somewhere between 15 to 20 fairly sophisticated phishing emails every single week. I get phone calls all the time. I text messages nonstop. I probably get one almost
Nonstop.
every single day.
Yeah, yeah.
And, and all it takes is one of them to be convincing enough to get you to do something.
Yeah, and like you were mentioning earlier, they're getting better and better. It used to be I used to laugh at them and show them to my wife. I was like, I mean, it doesn't even make any sense, but they're getting better and better and better. My wife just showed me one today, I think it was. There was supposed to have been a charge from Apple,
Mhm.
and the amount it's clever. They're getting better and better. It wasn't even that big of an amount. Obviously, they want us to click there and then give them credit card information, and then they go from there, right? Or whatever other credentials they're trying to steal. But even she thought it looked legit. And that points to the other practice that has always been a common practice in the financial side of things, is to have at least two people involved in any flow of money, right?
Absolutely. Dual control
Yeah,
is a very old but tried, true, and tested security
yeah,
mechanism.
yeah.
Because when you have two people involved, one of them is a heck of a lot more likely to raise suspicion than only one.
That's right. That's right. Okay, excellent. So let's wrap it up with this. Where do I get, if I've done nothing, I realize I am doing nothing. Where do I start? Where should I start as a small business owner?
The first thing is implement multi-factor authentication. That I'm going to tell everyone that right away. And if you can use an authenticator app rather than just a cell phone,
Okay.
like the text message
Yeah.
authentication, do the asset inventory. Make sure you understand what you have and where it is, and make sure that administrative access to the most important data and resources is restricted to an account that only has that access and is only used for that. Beyond that, I if you have a fairly decent amount of money that you're trying to protect, you should probably invest in security, because it, it's something that you're going to need, whether it's today or later, but you'd much rather have it before you need it than make that phone call after something's happened.
Agreed. Agreed. On that point, one of the things that I'm recommending really came about because now we have an opportunity for higher yield savings accounts, is to open that savings account at a completely separate institution, and
Yes.
then making sure that those are not, that it's a push model, right? So that if I hack into my Chase operating account, somebody hacks into my Chase operating account, they are not able to suck money from the savings account. I'd have to log in separately to the savings account and push it back over, right? So
Yes,
that's another technique that can help mitigate the exposure. Is that fair?
it is. And I
Okay.
actually really like that.
Mm.
I think separating out bank accounts is a great idea for
Yeah.
most small
Yeah.
businesses. The other thing is there's a lot of small businesses that use like Square or Stripe for
Hmm.
everything.
I use Stripe.
Having a merchant account set up at your bank, just in case all of a sudden Stripe
Mm,
puts a hold on your account or something
I
like that
see.
because they saw something fishy, that enables you to still take payments and still get money without being basically, left stranded for months or
Right.
weeks,
Right.
because
Yeah.
a lot of those payment processors or support models not the best, and it's hard to get somebody on the phone.
Correct. Yeah. Good tip. Excellent. All right. You have a book recommendation related to all of this. Tell us about that.
I sure do. So it's called How to Catch a Fish.
I love it.
Fish, Phish. So it was actually written by Nicholas Oles, who is one of the co-founders of Entoo Security. So you can
And
you can
it's
find how
written
to.
for the business owner.
It's written in a way where I think almost anyone can understand it. It's
Okay.
not
All right.
necessarily for business owners, but we've passed it along to colleagues and students and all sorts of
Yeah, it's
individuals.
not super technical, though. I'd be able to understand it if I don't have an IT background, let's say.
Yes.
Excellent. All right. We'll have a link to that on the show notes page, as well as the link to, did we talk about the waived onboarding fee? Did we talk about that?
Not yet, but
Okay.
yeah.
Tell us about that.
If any of your listeners want to either buy a managed services or our FTC Safeguards compliance program, we will waive the first month's onboarding fee.
Fantastic. And so where should we go online to learn more about Entoo?
www.entoosecurity.com.
All right, let's wrap it up. Nick, what's one thing you want us to take away from this conversation that we've had about cybersecurity as it relates to a small business owner?
An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. It is much, much cheaper to get to basically buy your security and get yourself secured on the front end than to go in and pay $400 or $500 an hour for an incident response firm to help you recover. The other piece, I talk to a lot of small business owners that they go out and they purchase cyber insurance, and they think
Yep.
that will be the saving grace in the event that they have a cyber incident. It is very common that cyber insurance policies don't pay because you may not have done the things you said you were doing when
Mhm.
the policy was underwritten, or the insurance policy itself doesn't cover all your losses and business interruption. There's a company called Knights of the Old over in the UK. They've been in business for 168 years. They survived the Great Depression, World War I, World War II.
Mm.
They went out of business last year from a ransomware attack.
Wow. Yeah.
They had $1 million cyber insurance policy, but they had almost 800 employees. $1 million was a drop in the bucket for them, and they never recovered.
Yeah, I agree. That's what I'm seeing as well. We're not saying you should not have that insurance, but don't think, oh, I'm good because I have that insurance.
Absolutely.
I think for me, so well said. I think to add to that and to augment what you said, realizing that we are the target as small business owners, we are the target. And secondly, I think that one of the things that we typically have a response to when it's something we don't understand or it's something that's ugly is we bury our head in the sand about it, right? And so because we have that misconception that we're not the target and it's something complex and ugly, we tend to ignore it. And I think that's a big mistake.
It is. It's very, very dangerous. A lot of us are in the service business, and we tell our clients, why try to do something on your own when it's not what you do? Like, instead you pay a professional.
Mhm.
It's the exact same thing with this.
Well said. All right, tell us again where to go online to learn more.
EntooSecurity.com.
Excellent. Nick, great conversation. Thanks for sharing all of these details and being transparent on your pricing model and everything that you offer there. Thanks for taking the time to be with me today.
Henry, it was a pleasure. Thanks so much for having me.
This is Henry Lopez, and thanks for joining us on this episode of The How of Business. My guest today, again, is Nick Mullen. I release new episodes every Monday morning. You can find the show anywhere you listen to podcasts, including the How of Business YouTube channel and my website, thehowofbusiness.com. Thanks again for listening.
Thank you for listening to The How of Business. For more information about our coaching programs, online courses, show notes pages, links, and other resources, please visit thehowofbusiness.com.